All right, if you're gearing up for your MD in community medicine, you have definitely come to the right place. Today, we're basically creating the ultimate study guide for the Janani Suraksha, or JSY. We're going to do a deep dive into the key assessments of this landmark scheme.
So, here's our game plan. First, we'll cover the basics. What exactly is JSY? Then we'll get into the absolutely critical role of the ASHA worker. After that, it's all about the data. What was the real impact? We'll also look at the challenges, because no scheme is perfect. And we'll wrap up with what the future should look like. Okay, first things first. Let's make sure we have a rock-solid understanding of the scheme itself. For any community medicine exam, nailing the core definition and how the intervention actually works, that's where you start getting full marks. So here's the absolute key. JSY is a conditional cash transfer scheme. This isn't just money being handed out. It's a very specific financial incentive with one major goal: to get women to shift from giving birth at home to delivering in a health facility. That's the core concept you've got to lock in. Now, this is where the design of the scheme gets really smart. The cash assistance isn't the same for everyone. Look at this tiered structure. The money is way higher in what they call low-performing states, or LPS, compared to the high-performing states. This shows a really clear strategy, right? They're putting more resources where the need is the greatest, giving a much bigger incentive in places with the worst maternal health stats. But, just offering cash isn't always enough to make something work on a huge scale. You need a powerful link on the ground. And for JSY, that essential, absolutely vital link is the ASHA, the Accredited Social Health Activist. This quote right here, from the official guidelines, it's everything. It tells you the ASHA isn't just some helper. She is the central connector for the entire system. Think of her as the bridge between the government health system and the community. Without her, this whole thing probably wouldn't have worked. And this just shows you the insane amount of responsibility on the ASHA's shoulders. I mean, she's not just a motivator, she's a full-on facilitator. Her job covers the entire spectrum of care, from the very first step of finding a pregnant woman and getting her into antenatal care, all the way to that crucial follow-up visit after the baby is born. Understanding just how much she does is key to analyzing JSY. So, we have the cash incentive, we have the community worker. Now we get to the big question, the one every evaluation has to answer. Did it actually work? Did this whole setup successfully change people's behavior on a massive scale? Let's see what the evidence says. This was it. This was the main question the big 2008 assessment by the UNFPA wanted to answer. It's the bottom line, really. After all the money spent and all the health workers mobilized, did more women actually give birth in hospitals and clinics? And the data is just, wow! It's striking. In the 5 low-performing states they studied, institutional deliveries shot up from just over 23% right when JSY launched to almost 55% just a couple of years later. That's more than double. This is a stat you want to have in your back pocket for your exam. It is the single biggest piece of evidence for the scheme's success. And this number really helps you grasp the scale of that success. It shows that by 2008, nearly half of all births in these states were directly part of the JSY scheme. So the mother delivered in a facility and got the benefit. This wasn't some small pilot program, it was huge. It was the major force driving that trend we just saw. Okay, but here's where a good analysis and a really high-scoring exam answer sets itself apart. You can't just talk about the successes. You have to critically look at the weaknesses and maybe the unintended consequences. So where did JSY fall short? This right here reveals a massive quality gap. I mean, the whole point of delivering in a hospital isn't just to get the baby out. It's to get that critical post-delivery care in the first 48 hours. But in states like Bihar and UP, the huge majority of women were sent home way too early. The system was great at bringing women in, but it was totally overwhelmed and just couldn't provide the proper standard of care. It's also really important to understand why some women still chose not to go to a facility. And this chart is fascinating because money isn't even the top reason. Instead, you see practical things like home is convenient, or women just feeling like it wasn't necessary for a normal pregnancy. This tells us that changing behavior is about more than just money. You have to deal with culture, how people perceive risk, and all those logistical headaches. So, finally, you take all these successes and all these challenges, and you ask, what's next? Where do we go from here? You know, for your exams, ending your answer with solid, evidence-based recommendations, that's how you show you really get it. the key recommendations really show a major shift in thinking. First, you have to admit the public system can't handle all this demand alone, so you have to bring in the private sector in a smart way. Second, and this is the big one, you have to shift the focus from just quantity to quality. That means you track things like how long a mother stays and if clinical rules were followed, not just counting how many births happened in a facility. And third, none of that happens unless you strengthen the whole health system. More staff, better buildings, and a reliable supply chain. And that brings us to the most important takeaway from this whole analysis. This question right here. JSY was, without a doubt, a massive success in changing where women give birth in India. It created a huge demand for institutional care. But the next challenge, the challenge for the next generation of public health readers, the challenge for you, is to make sure that every single woman who walks through that door gets high-quality, safe, and respectful care. That is the next frontier.